two brief homecoming stories with you that have an unexpected twist for me. I grew up here in Lancaster City, just a few blocks away on West King Street, with a father who was an angry, hateful man who didn't like anyone who was not like himself. So much so that he had his KKK hood that got hung in the window of the storefront that he owned. I go past that storefront now, and it's a Latino-run business, which makes me laugh every time I go by there. I knew very early on that I did not want to be like my dad. I knew that love was bigger than hate, and I knew that joy was bigger than anger. A lot of that I learned at Fulton Elementary, just a few blocks away from here. When I was 9, my parents divorced, and when I was 12, we moved to Columbia. And the best thing about Columbia was that my grandmother was there. She was an amazing person who also very much knew the values of love and joy. But by the time we moved there when I was 12, she was very sick, and when I was 15, she died. The night that she died, I was overwhelmed with this sense of peace. It was like this voice was saying to me, "Don't worry, it's going to be okay." I wish that voice would have added the word "eventually" to what it was saying, because it would be another 10 years before things would start to be okay. At 16, I moved to East Petersburg with my family, and then at 21, moved back to Columbia with my husband, who had promised me to fix the life that I had been brought up in and to really show me what home was. But he didn't. He made his home with the woman he was having his third affair with. So that night, the last night in the house, I'm laying on the floor of the kitchen crying and praying to a God that I had given up on several years before, a God that I had written off as vengeant and angry. And yet, the words that were coming out of my mouth as I laid there on the floor were, "God, there has to be more to life than this. There has to be more to life than this." And I don't know how many times I said that or how long I laid there crying, but when I eventually stood up with no more tears and no more energy, there was this resolve in me that I needed to find a church. I have no idea where that came from, because I had written off church about the same time I wrote off God, for a lot of different reasons. But yet, every fiber of my being knew that that's what I needed to do. And so I went back to all the places that I had visited when I was a kid or in the time prior to that, and nothing felt right. And then I accepted an invitation from a friend to go to a church that I had never even heard of. Have any of you heard of the Moravians? So I went with this friend, and the first Sunday that I went, it was nothing short of a Hallmark movie moment. I was in the second pew, and I'm not kidding, the sun shone through a stained glass window of Jesus right onto the pew that I was sitting on as we sang Amazing Grace. If that's not a sign, I don't know what is. We got to that fourth verse, which says, "Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home." There's that word "home" again. And in that moment, I had that same sense of peace, that overwhelming feeling that everything was going to be okay. And I wouldn't have to wait 10 years this time to have it happen. I was indeed home. There were people at the church that invited me to holiday dinners. I had a new circle of friends, got a new job, found a new apartment. Life was really, really good. I joined the choir and found that I have a passion for singing. I took on leadership roles, and although I was raised to be told that I had nothing of meaning to say, people were actually listening to me. My confidence grew. By leaps and bounds, I was no longer the girl who kept my head down as I walked, but I could actually look up and make eye contact and have conversations with people. My confidence grew so much that I decided to apply for a dual Masters of Divinity, Masters of Social Work program in Bethlehem. As I was filling out the application, one of the questions was, would you be willing to go where the church calls you to go, wherever that might be after graduation? I took the application and I put it off to the side and I said, you know what? Am I really willing to leave this place that I'm calling home that took me 25 years to find, to know that it's possible that I might not be able to return here until after retirement? And again, that voice, it's okay, do this. So I sent in the application and I was accepted. In May, I graduated from both programs with honors. June, I became a licensed social worker. October, I was ordained into the Moravian Church as a pastor. And then at the time leading up to my graduation, I knew of openings in North Dakota, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Nazareth, Pennsylvania. So as the months kind of went on post-graduation and I still hadn't received a call, I was getting a little nervous. And then one night, the district president called me and he said, I'd like to take you to lunch at Applebee's tomorrow. Now we knew, in seminary, we knew that that was code for, I have a call letter for you. So before I could even sit down at the table, he handed me an envelope, and before I could open that envelope, he said, it's for Lancaster. The pastor, who was here, had retired a few months earlier, leaving a vacancy there. So in November, I was ordained and I was installed as the pastor of the Moravian Center of Lancaster, right above the bus station, just blocks from the elementary school where I learned the values of love and joy and grace. Just blocks from the home that I grew up in, that once had a symbol of hate hanging in its window, and now has the sign of a Latino business owner above its doors. And I am home.